just had a thought. I'm not going to get buried, but I'm going to have a gravestone erected specifically directed at any paranormal investigators who are prowling around cemeteries, and is simply going to read, "Spirit are people too." And I'll tell you why. Howdy all, just thought I'd do a little blog while I'm waiting for Bethany to finish her appointment. Just had some thoughts to do with the paranormal investigation and understanding the spirit and the benefit of understanding the spiritual side a little bit more when you're working in the paranormal. There's some great people out there doing some fantastic investigations, and there's a lot of people who are starting out who are having a little bit of fun with the investigations, but not really sort of understanding more the essence of spirit. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Basically, the thing is, you go out there in the spiritual field and you get it using all the different types of instruments, the K2s, REM pods, spirit boxes and rods and whatever else, and people are getting some great interactions. And the thing is, you can go to a place on a regular basis and you can get interactions one particular day or night, and then the next time you go back you get stuff all, and it's, you know, the place is active. But the thing is that, you know, you've got to try and understand too that each time that you go there you may be trying to interact with very different spirit, you know, that come across. It's not always the same spirit that you're interacting with. Sometimes you get lucky and you do interact with the same spirits, but in a lot of cases you'll get fresh spirits that are hanging around the area coming forward and trying to interact with you. Then other times you'll get nothing at all, and there's definite reasons why. I'm going to explain a little story. I used to do a lot of work at a particular lunatic asylum that was abandoned, and there was some nights when we get a lot of interaction and other nights when you get stuff all. And the interesting thing there is that, you know, as I was saying before, sometimes you've got, if you're talking about like a lunatic asylum, it's a huge place. So you've got spirit wandering all over the asylum. So the spirit that you're interacting with the first night, where you're getting a lot of interactions, they may be, you know, spirit that are happy to come forward and are used to having you around. But the second night you go there, you may not be getting any interactions at all, and you kind of like wonder why. Well, a little story here. We had this happen a few times, and going through different sections of this particular asylum, I knew that particular section that we were in was very active. I could feel and sense, and I could actually see spirit right in the background, you know, sort of just watching from another room. And it was interesting because there was a big glass partition between the two rooms that we were well, one particular room that I was working in. There was a glass partition sort of blocking off the next room, and you could actually see spirit faces. And I had another investigator with me, and that investigator could see the spirit faces through the glass partition in the other room, but they were not coming into the room that we were in. So, you know, it comes to spirit choice. You got to understand, when you understand a little bit about spirit, you understand that spirit, like us humans, have freedom of choice. and they either choose to come forward or they choose not to. Sometimes if they're strange, if you are strange to them, they'll stand back and they'll watch you for a while and decide, you know, what your motives are, what your intent is, before they actually step forward. And then you'll start getting reactions on a spirit box and K2s and REM pods and whatever else. In this particular case, where we were in one room and we could see and sense spirit in the second room, what I ended up doing, the asylum, by the way, closed down back in the 80s. What I ended up doing was a little experiment, and I happened to have my guitar with me in the car, so I went down and got my guitar with me, and we sat in this particular room, and I started playing music, started playing some songs from the 70s, 80s and the 60s, and after a little while, and I was singing along, playing a few tunes, and after a little while, spirit started coming from the second room into the room that we were at, and we started getting some interaction. And we kept putting it out there that we weren't there to harm them at all. We had a good intent. We wanted to communicate with them, and we ended up having some pretty interesting communication with some of the spirit. You've also got to understand too that in a place like an asylum, or if you're working in an area, I'm just going to name like Gettysburg, or, you know, any areas like in England where there was a lot of wars or massacres or something like that, spirit are going to be a little bit edgy about having strangers in that area, and they're going to stand back and watch you for a while. And again, they're going to try and suss out your intent before they want to interact. And that's a normal human response. You know, it's like we do that ourselves. So I remember quite often, you know, when I go into places where there's crowds of people, whether it be pubs or, you know, whether it be, you know, birthday gatherings where there's a lot of strangers, I'll tend to sit back, and a lot of people do the same thing. I'll tend to sit back and I'll watch people, and I'll suss out and try to use my intuition to suss out what they're like, and I'll make that choice of whether I actually feel comfortable enough to actually stand there and hold a conversation with them, or just sit in the background. And, you know, you've probably done the same thing too. Well, spirit will do the same thing. And it's just it's important to understand when you're working in a paranormal field too, that spirit, just as us humans, have a lot of different emotions. You know, if the spirit was abused in life, and I'll throw it again at the asylum sort of thing, or a jail, if a spirit was abused in life, they're not really going to be too enthusiastic about interacting with humans that are trying to interact with them, until they actually get the feel of them and understand that they are not the ones that actually hurt them in the past. You know, so as a little bit of a sideline, it kind of like helps to try to feel the energies around you. And it's not only the energies, you know, it's like feeling if there is spirit around you, but trying to feel the emotional energy that's around you. Because you could walk into a place and you'll feel a lot of darkish type of energy. You might feel that there was a lot of anger and frustration type of energy. You know, you might feel that type of energy. And the thing is, that energy, in one particular instance, you know, it can be because that is how the spirit is feeling. You know, is there an emotional thing that is holding that spirit to that area? Is it you know, the residual area, residual energy of the area that you're in. You know, were you in an area where there was a murder or a you know, like a war or a slaughter or something like that, you'll feel that type of dark energy. And understanding that energy, or trying to pick up and sense on that energy and trying to understand why you're feeling that energy. Is it coming from the residual of the area of a happening in the past, or is it coming from a spirit itself? You know, these are the things that, you know, when you put a little bit of spiritual thought into the paranormal, you start understanding what you're feeling and where it's coming from. And, you know, it's like spirit that are earthbound for a reason. Usually there's some sort of an emotional link, and it can be emotions from a love connection, not wanting to let go of or be away from somebody they love. It could be a familiarity of an area. They could have built the house or built the castle, worked the farm, and it's something they love doing, it's something they know, and they don't know to cross over, so they just hover around the area that's familiar to them. And it could be an abuse type of issue, or it could be a murder, and you know, because of that, because of what they experienced just before the events, that emotional issue could have kept them in the area. And in cases like that, where there's abuse and murder, of course their last feeling was to be fearful of the living, and you know, so they're still going to be fearful of the living. So if you walk in with an open mind and try to feel the emotions of the area, or the emotions of spirit that might be around, you'll start understanding how you can interact better with them. It's almost like you need to put on a little bit of a counselling hat sometimes, and you basically all that is just sitting there and putting it out there, and sort of, you know, telling spirit that you're there for a good intent, that you'd really like to communicate with them, you'd like to know their story, and, you know, is there anything that you could do or say that might help them or ease their emotions, so that eventually they can move forward and cross over. The big thing is that some spirit do stay in the area because they love where they lived, they love the area, and it's familiar to them, and they don't know that there is a better place for them to be. And so sometimes you've got to inform them that you've got to, you know, try to inform them that, you know, they do have family waiting, and you know, sometimes that's all you need to do if you've got the ability and know how to help them cross over and draw in the energy, draw in the light to be able to help them cross over. If you've got the ability to work with your guides and you know, higher spirit to be able to try and cross them over, that's a great thing. But if you don't, you know, just the simple fact of informing them that, hey, you know, do you remember your family? Do you remember your mum and dad? Do you remember your grandparents? They're in a completely different place, and it's a place that they're waiting for you, you know. But anyway, that's another story about all the crossing over scenario. But, you know, to me, it's like, if you're a paranormal investigator, to me, if you can gain a little bit of knowledge on spirit, why they're still hanging around, why they might have some heavy emotions that are keeping them here, and you know, in doing that, you might get an understanding of how you need to talk to them. And when you find the right way to talk to them, you'll find you'll start getting a lot more interactions. It's like when we were sitting there playing the guitar in this asylum, and we had half a dozen spirit in the other room standing there watching us. Just by sitting there and casually just playing something that was familiar to them, and using music with its different tones to calm and soothe them and to intrigue them, that brought them forward, and that started some great interactions. So it's a matter of trying to understand spirit a little bit more, and, you know, trying to understand what's going to help them to come forward, whether it's to try and, you know, find a way to make them at ease with you being around and make them understand that you've got a good intent with what you're doing in your paranormal explorations, or whether it's a case of I forgot what I was going to say there. Hang on, I'll just light a smoke. Might help me think. Or whether it's a case of just trying to suss out their emotions, and you know, if you do feel some emotions where, you know, you feel that they have been hurt in the past and are a little bit scared of, because of the last experiences they had in life, they're a little bit scared to come forward to talk to the living, and you can sort of try and ease their mind a little bit by just having a little bit of a chat, and sort of saying, okay, I feel that you went through some real big emotional things and some trauma and whatever else. Would you like to, you know, chat about it? Maybe we can sort of find some way of, you know, communicating together, and, you know, and giving you an outlet to tell, so that you can tell me how you feel, and perhaps we can talk things out a little bit to make your emotional issues a little bit less. And in doing that, that eases their mind a little bit. It frees up their mind, their spirit, to eventually, over time, be able to find the right way for them to cross over and join their family. So in other cases, you know, spirit, they love coming forward and love interacting, and sometimes that's all that you end up doing, like in the paranormal field, just sort of, you know, putting it out there and saying that you want to prove to the living that you exist, you know, that spirit do exist. And you know, sometimes that's all that you need, you know, sometimes that's just the part that you play. You know, and of course, when you go back to those areas again, if you develop a good rapport with a particular spirit, they might see you coming and come forward straight away, and you'll get some great interactions again. But again, over time, to me, it's important to put it forward in one way or another, whether it's just a word or a comment that, hey, do you realise where your family is? You know, there is a better place for you to be, and, you know, when you're ready, there will be help for you to cross over. You know, you'll find a way to be with family, and by putting those thoughts in their mind, that's creating a sort of an energy link between where they are and, we'll call it the afterlife, you know, where the rest of their family are. And creating that energy link over time, sometimes you don't have to help them cross over. It's that energy link that creates that little portal, that little link between that spirit who's still roaming around on the earth plane and the spirit who are there waiting on the other side for them. And you know, it's the energies, it's the spirit that are on the other side will be able to link to them and help them cross over. Perhaps you don't need to cross them over at all. It's all a time thing, you know. Sometimes it's like the saying, all good things happen in their own time. Anyway, I just wanted to more or less sort of put a couple of those thoughts to you, basically because, you know, to me it's important, if you're going to be in a paranormal field, to understand a little bit more about spirit, understand why, you know, you may walk into a place and you might feel some very, very emotional feelings in a place, to understand why spirit will come forward and some won't. It's important to understand that spirit, quite often before they pass, they've had some sort of a traumatic event, and you know, to understand a little bit about what they went through can help you in your paranormal investigations. And sort of putting it out there that you're trying to understand them, that you want to you know, be there for them, you know, in one way or another, whether it's just a word, a thought, in some way, you know, just be an ear for them, you know. And you know, sometimes it just happens like that. Sometimes spirit wants an ear, so you've got to use your intuition and you've got to use your senses a little bit to try and figure out what questions you need to be asking them. At other times there's spirit who are just happy to talk to you and just happy to chat and answer any questions, but other spirit, sometimes you've got to work in a particular way. And understanding spirit a little bit, learning to understand spirit a little bit more, certainly I feel helps you when you're doing your paranormal investigations. Alright, cheers, that's about it for my little chat, and I know I drag on a little bit, but yeah, that's me. Alright, cheers everyone, bye.